Welcome to Tridenlogy, the channel that's all about fascinating facts and discoveries.
In this episode, we're going to delve into a crucial topic that can greatly impact your relationships and personal well-being: the signs of poor boundaries. Boundaries play a vital role in maintaining healthy connections and protecting your own mental and emotional health. This video will explore the red flags and warning signs that indicate poor boundaries. From difficulty saying no and feeling responsible for others' emotions to experiencing constant overwhelm and feeling taken advantage of, understanding these signs will empower you to establish and maintain healthy boundaries in your life. Whether you struggle with setting boundaries yourself or you want to recognize these signs in others, this video is for you. So get comfortable and let's uncover the signs of poor boundaries. 1. You can't make a decision. The first is that a person discovers that they are unable to make a decision, and they are frequently unable to make a decision because they are conflicted. They are divided between overextending oneself or doing what other people want and what they truly want to do. So, I believe the dream in that situation is that someone else will step in and make this decision. But when you can't make a decision, it's much more difficult to draw a line in the sand and say, actually, I can't come to the movies tonight because I have a deadline, or I won't be able to stay for dessert because or I won't be able to take on that extra piece of writing because I have to finish the other report first. So that's a decision. But if a person thinks, I don't know what's going to happen if I make this decision, or something bad's going to happen, a person may hold back on making decisions and may have this difficulty with decision-making repeatedly. 2. People-pleasing. The second type of evidence of bad boundaries is someone who is a people-pleaser. People-pleasing is now a huge risk for all types of improper limits, and it's how a lot of folks paint themselves into a corner. People-pleasing is exactly what it sounds like. It is giving in to what a person genuinely wants and doing what other people want. It is denying one's own self-interest. It is denying one's own goals, desires, you name it. So when someone is people-pleasing, they are essentially catering to what other people desire. When I worked therapeutically with people-pleasers, one thing I really concentrated on was being conscious of the dynamic, but also that there is sometimes some secondary value from being a people-pleaser, right? Because when you're a people-pleaser, you're the pleasant person, and you get to have that identity of, yeah, that person's cool. They're incredibly nice. They just go along with it, and it's like this strange kind of strangely manipulative dance. You folks who are being pleasers are saying, aren't they great? Aren't they wonderful? So they're reinforcing something that's actually harmful to the people-pleaser, and the people-pleaser's buy-in, the people-pleaser person's buy-in, is that they get to travel around the world as the pleasant, accommodating person. As a result, some of the work in therapy goes much deeper. It's saying, why is it so important for you to be viewed as this person who always goes along, who always makes people's lives easier? And it's about breaking down some of those concepts, the identity surrounding it, and understanding the history behind that. Because when we people please, we make awful limits and stay out later than we want. We will do more than we wish. We'll take on a slew of new tasks and obligations that will put us in an uncomfortable, potentially toxic situation. We keep attempting to please that other person. I believe that when a person is a people pleaser and finds an audience of people who are prepared to drink up all of their people pleasing, it becomes a sort of poisonous dance in which the people who are being pleasers say, oh, this is fine, I don't have to question it. You're on the receiving end of pleasing everyone else's people. It is not our responsibility to enforce other people's limits, but it is part of our human responsibility to be sympathetic and compassionate. So if we notice that someone is overextending themselves in our service, we might say, okay, please step back. You've done so much. It may be a wonderful, reciprocal, and supporting dance that way, but ultimately it is on all of us to recognize that if we are people pleasers, it will negatively affect and destroy boundaries. 3. Overly focused on others to the point of exhaustion. Another kind of an extension, sort of a third symptom that people have inadequate boundaries, is those who become so overly focused on other people that they feel drained and fatigued in their own life. So basically, they take care of everyone else's requirements, schedules, and so on. And they are not taking care of themselves. They are absolutely exhausting themselves. This becomes hard in terms of a boundary issue because we have to consider things like, for example, caregiving burdens, especially when people have small children. It's difficult to set a boundary and roll up to your child and say, "Well, darling, I'm setting a boundary and I'm not going to change your diaper," because it doesn't work that way. What it does mean is that the person in charge of very young children may need to create those boundaries, those caregiving boundaries, in other areas. For example, they do not need to feel obligated to prepare a 5-course dinner or to do extra things for other family members who could be doing them themselves or even at work. 4. A lost sense of self. Someone who has lost their sense of self is another symptom that they have weak boundaries. When a person lacks healthy boundaries, they frequently begin not only absorbing roles in other people's lives, but almost absorbing other people's lives. Become your own bad days, just as you are other people's bad days. Your losses become the losses of others, and someone will say, "I have no idea who I am anymore. I feel like I only exist for my children, my partner, or my work." They've already lost them. What exactly are you? What do you believe in? People with inadequate boundaries tend to lose their sense of self because, when their limits are encroached upon, they find themselves living their life not only in the service of others, but almost like absorbing their identities so that their own identity is lost in the shuffle. This is a hazardous precedent, and you'll see it repeated in parents who say, "I became so concerned with my kids and everything. My kids' schedules, my kids' needs, my kids' meals, my kids' rooms, my kids this, my kids that." In case you didn't know, these kids do grow up, and if you do it well, they grow up and create their own life. Many people will state at that time, "I have no idea who I am anymore." So there is a risk there. That may not even happen in child rearing, though I believe it does in a very intense way, but it can happen in a relationship where a person is all about, "I'm going to be for them, and I'm going to support their career, I'm going to take care of them," and a person turns around one day and says, "Well, I certainly got them to where they needed to, but who am I?" Losing one's sense of self in a work can also occur because the job becomes so all-consuming that a person loses touch with their social connections, hobbies, and interests. They become the job, and therefore lose their sense of self. So it's a clear indication that a person may not have very good boundaries because they've essentially lost their sense of self as a result of not being able to keep these boundaries more properly. 5. Oversharing. Oversharing is another indicator that people have bad limits. It's not an either-or situation. Sharing is more of a process that should be completed over time and is based on trust. So, when a person overshares, they may, for example, share information with someone with whom they have not yet established sufficient trust, and they may have shared something that they should not have shared, which could be inappropriate to share because it could be sharing the confidences or secrets of another person. This could put them at risk, that they might be giving information that could put them in an extremely bad job situation. One of the reasons why people overshare is because they may feel overwhelmed or dominated in a scenario, and the oversharing may be a technique for them to satisfy an attachment need or connect with the other person. And the thought of, if I give, and we'll see this as a tendency in individuals who have histories of trauma, and we know that boundaries are a difficulty for people with histories of trauma, is to go in there and lay out too much, too early. I'm the first to admit that I value emotional vulnerability and sharing, but what I value more is discernment and being excellent gatekeepers for ourselves. If a connection is trusting and improving with time, we may feel like, "Oh, I'm trusting this person more. I might be able to share the following information with them." Even in therapy, I don't anticipate somebody to walk in and drop the cargo hold. If it happens, I'm fine with it. It's therapy, and there's confidentiality and safeguards in place. But I also appreciate it a lot. It's okay if people say, "I need to learn from you. I need to get to know you a little bit." But when it comes to our social relationships, workplace relationships, or relationships that don't have those protections of sort of built-in boundaries through things like confidentiality and all of that. Oversharing is often a sign of poor boundaries because you're going in there so quickly that not only could it potentially make another person uncomfortable, but it could also put the oversharer in a position of tremendous vulnerability and might make it harder for the oversharer to recover. What we do know about people who overshare and then have that oversharing come back to bother them is that they tend to blame themselves for the misuse of the information by another person. At the end of the day, if someone harms you because of the information you overshared, the person who injured you has responsibility. However, many people will blame themselves, and oversharing is a real symptom of weak limits. Feeling annoyed in your relationships and not being able to define it, but feeling a sense of bitterness and annoyance, this could be an indication of weak boundaries, and especially when it is not reciprocated, which is generally the case. Like I mentioned, for those two reasons, either other individuals have greater boundaries or they profit so much from your lack of boundaries that they're thinking, remember, setting and maintaining healthy boundaries is essential for your well-being and the quality of your relationships. It's okay to prioritize your needs, say no when necessary, and communicate your limits effectively.
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content on personal development and self-improvement. See you in next video.